Okay, hi everyone who have joined the call. We've got Leigh Jones today with us. Those who do not know too much about Leigh, let me just introduce you to him about. He was the former assistant coach for Wales during the Graham Henry era. He worked as the defense coach with Japan during the 2015 World Cup campaign alongside Eddie Jones, where they recorded that memorable victory with South Africa. He's also functioned as the head coach of Hong Kong Rugby, and his last assignment was the general manager with the Leicester Tigers, where he was working alongside the current England coach Chris Borthwick. Leigh also holds a PhD in performance psychology as well as an MSc in coaching science. So he's also specializes in that area. And today, a lot of the discussion is going to be about rugby psychology. So yeah, so Leigh, that's a little bit of an intro about Leigh. Leigh, could you just tell us what you're up to at the moment?
Yeah, first of all, hello everyone. Thanks for taking the time out to join. Could I ask you to put your cameras on so I can see some friendly faces, please?
So let me just, I think I need to give them permission to do it. So since we've got a few, I'm going to send them the invites to start their videos. Okay, they'll just keep popping, Leigh, so you can just start as I do that.
Okay, guys, great to meet you. If I'm conscious of my Welsh accent. If I'm not articulating myself well enough, please put your hand up and I'll slow down. Okay, give me a thumbs up, Faisal. Give me a thumbs up if you understand. All right, brilliant. The next thing is, if I mispronounce your names, apologies for that. Some of your names are quite difficult to pronounce. So yeah, I apologize in advance if I don't get them exactly correct. And then the question, Bilal, could you repeat the question to me, please?
Yes, so I just gave a bit of an introduction about you. So I just would like to know what you're up to at the moment since your last job with Leicester Tigers.
So I've recently, in the last week or two, started with the Scarlets region in Wales as performance director. The Scarlets are one of 4 professional regions within Wales. And 2 weeks ago, I was fortunate enough to get the post as performance director, which kind of means I oversee everything from performances on the field, all the support disciplines, the S&C, the medical. I kind of just make sure all the energy is running in one direction. Besides that, I also for a consultancy firm. I'm an associate with a consultancy firm, and that's about high performance coaching, high performance psychology, doing a lot of one-to-one work to ensure that people can get the best from their performance, whether that be in sport or whether it be in business. So a lot of one-to-one clients.
Nice, nice. So, Leigh, let's just get straight into it. And my first question, actually, a lot's been going on with the school rugby season, particularly with the referees, and that's been a lot to do with the pressure to win. And the term they use, basically, the professionalization of schoolboy rugby. Basically, schoolboy rugby players are probably treated like professional athletes here in Sri Lanka, particularly if you're playing in the A division. Lots of money being pumped into schoolboy teams, at least the top 8 teams. So there's pressure from the sponsors on the board members to produce results. And then that pressure tends to transfer from the board members onto the coaches. And the coaches do their best basically to hold on to their jobs and deliver the results. And then that pressure transfers on to players. Just in a very generic sense, what would you say, what are your thoughts on the professionalization of schoolboy rugby and how could it be managed with all stakeholders?
From far away, I think it's potentially crazy professionalizing players at that age. And I wonder what the long-term effects are going to be for these young guys. As I understand, it's the rugby schedule is very heavy. They're also expected to cope with their academic work and grow up and just enjoy life. So I'd be very interested to see how they are achieving a good balance. I kind of assume there's not a great balance anywhere at the moment. Would I be correct with that assumption?
Yes, I would probably say so at the moment, Lee. And that was actually my follow-up question is we're talking about life balance. So probably when you're in school and playing schoolboy sports, you're learning to balance studies and sports. And then as you move on, that probably trains you to for work-life balance as well. But with some of the rugby schools, we have either one of the two happening. Either players are dropping out from rugby because they need to focus on their studies, or vice versa, where they're delaying their exams by 1 year, so because they cannot manage both and they're just purely focusing on rugby for their school season. So that's basically where it stands at the moment. So like to hear your thoughts on basically balancing studies and sports training in general.
So it's vital that they do find a balance. And I tend to use a few frameworks, a few models around this. There's a guy called Herzberg. Herzberg has a theory that our life is split up between hygiene issues and motivational issues. So we're either doing hygiene issues or we're doing motivational issues. Hygiene issues would be
Let me just mute that.
getting up. Sorry.
Keep going.
Yeah. All good?
Yeah.
So we have these hygiene issues, we have motivational. Hygiene issues, we wake up in the morning, we clean our teeth, we shower, we go to work, we might have to get the kids off to school, we then go to work, we might have to go and do some shopping, pay some bills. They are all hygiene issues and we have to do them. Once they are done, we then look at the motivational issues. The motivational issues might be playing rugby. It might be going to play golf. It could be going to have a swim. It could be anything that kind of motivates you, yeah? Now, what Herzberg says is there's an ideal balance. If we're going to stay healthy, both mentally and physically, we need to hit this balance. Could we put a question on the chat to see what people think that balance is between hygiene in their life and motivation? What should it be? Should the split be across 100%? Does that make sense?
Yes, so if anyone has any questions, you could just push it in the chat box if you've not turned on your cameras. Yeah, does it make sense? Just a yes or any follow-up question to that? Sri Lankans are generally a bit of a shy bunch, so they are better listeners than speakers. So I think we have a couple of people saying it makes sense. So yeah.
But ask those people what they think a good balance would be.
Okay, so what would
how
you
much
think
hygiene?
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Leigh.
What percentage should be hygiene in our life? What percentage should be motivation to achieve a good balance? That's the question.
So you guys can just type it out on the chat box or just send a request, and you can even speak up to the camera, whichever you like. Fazil,
No
can I pick on you? Okay, so GD says 70-30.
Not a bad guess. The actual balance is 80-20. So our life is, if we can achieve 80% hygiene, 20% motivation, then we're going to live reasonably healthy. So where these young rugby players are concerned, we've got to make sure they're hitting that balance. If we can achieve 70-30, that's even better. Yeah? So there's that general life principle around the Herzberg theory. Then we dig in and look at a rugby session. We look at our planning. Same theory. When we plan a rugby session, how much is hygiene? How much is motivation across a rugby session? How much fun do we have? How much learning do we have? Along with the mundane of rugby, the scrummaging, the line out, the physical work, because we have to try and achieve the same balance for every session, every period, every 6 weeks, and every season. If we can achieve that balance, the youngsters are going to come back. We need 20 minutes of motivation, 20% of motivation. So what is motivation? It would be touch rugby. It would be a new sequence practice. It would be something that engages them outside of the mundane. Have I explained that well enough, Bilal?
Yeah, I think that's quite clear for everyone. Basically 20% fun and basically and motivation, and basically 80% is the stuff that needs to get done basically to win rugby games.
Yeah, yeah. And the 20% is not necessarily just fun. It's stuff that engages the youngsters, stuff that they might find challenging. Yeah, it's the stuff that brings them back. It is the 20% that brings them back to training, not the 80. That is my experience. You get the 20% right, they'll come back, they'll enjoy. If we keep ramming hygiene issues, then they tend not to enjoy, they tend to switch off. We've got a bad balance.
Okay. There is a, just to follow up to that, Lee, there is also, and how do you manage that? Because when I have coached, I've coached about 3 or 4 schools as well. There is sometimes the thought process that the sort of army type training is required. You know, you're not pushing the players hard enough. You're going too easy on them. They need to train hard. How do you generally manage that with board members? Because sometimes you may follow that perfect balance in a training week or a training block, but sometimes results don't go your way for other reasons. And then basically you get the coaches get that pressure that you're not working the players hard enough. And basically what those sort of board members in those weekly meetings are alluding, basically you need to push them harder. They want more army type training, and you're going easy on them. How do you sort of manage that balance or manage those politics with the basically the board members?
So I'm lucky I come from a professional background. Therefore, we can measure. We can measure how far people run. We can measure how fast people run. We can measure lots and lots of things. So in the professional world, players are running between 17 and 22K per week. Yep, 17 and 22K depending on their position. Around 15% of that needs to be high speed meters, 5 meters per second. If we can achieve that, we know they're getting fitter, they're not getting unfitter. Yep. Also, there's strength, there's accelerations and deaccelerations. I fully understand you guys cannot do that. Yep. So what's more important here for me is the psychology of it. Is it a good time to show what we're currently dealing with, what we're looking at this end?
Yeah. So I had that question. So I'll just throw it to the audience about Generation Z basically. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrongly, Generation Z is anyone who's born after 1997, and how you manage them is very different to millennials. So basically, I think all the coaches, parents on the call today are dealing with Generation Z. We probably are from the millennial generation. So yeah, and Leigh has got a bit of a presentation on that. So Leigh, you can fire away. All yours.
Yep. So position yourself here as well in terms of whether you're a millennial, a Gen Z, and or a Generation Alpha, which is the next generation coming through, Bilal. Yeah. And the trend is going more and more in the direction I'm going to talk about. So we have to become more flexible as coaches, more adaptable. I want to go back one step before I show this. In terms of the pressure coming from the board, the pressure coming from above, you have to recognize that, but you have to be strong. I have some sayings. if you're going to fall on your fall on your own sword. Do not fall on somebody else's. That means you do what you think is right. Trust your judgment. Trust yourself. And it's far better to get sacked for doing what you thought was correct than doing what you thought somebody else said was correct. So really follow your beliefs and stay strong. It can be a very lonely job being a lead coach. Yep. Just make sure you're constantly reviewing the important things, because sometimes we look at too much. What are the important things I need to get right? And be strong. Trust myself in terms of the direction I've chosen to go. Okay, and then it comes to the players. And if I can just share the screen. Are you seeing the, what are you seeing there, Bilal?
Just see the Zoom sign, Lee. We cannot see the document here.
Now?
No, not yet.
Hold on a second, and then I'm having some technical difficulties. Let's have a look. Now you see my desktop,
Yeah.
I hope?
Yes, I think everyone sees it. If anyone
Great.
doesn't, just tap on the chat box, but I see it, Lee. Yeah.
So let me recap. If you're having pressure, you have to be strong and trust your instinct, trust your way. But a big challenge for us is understanding now the type of individuals we will be coaching. Generation Z are generally the group that I deal with now. And this is what I'm confronted with. Generation Alpha will be the next generation from, sorry, that should be 2010 to 2024. This is Generation Z. They are the best educated generation to date. They are the most adaptable and agile in theory. That means they should flex to new learning. They pick up new things quite quickly. They're very tech savvy, very smart with all the electronics and technology around. Hence, they're very visual in the way they learn, more so than previous generations. The big one is they need a why. They need to understand why they are doing what the coach has requested. If we can't give them that why, they will not fully buy in. They will not fully get on board. Yep. And they respond really well to meetings, puzzles, and challenges. Okay? Any questions, any comments there, guys?
Yeah, let's just pause it for 15 seconds, Lee, and let's just open it out to the audience if you have any questions with regard to this particular slide Lee just spoke about.
This is the positive side of the Gen Z group. And Gen Alpha will swing even more this way.
Lee, I think we can go on. We have no questions. So, yeah.
Okay, so that's the upside of Gen Z. This is the downside. They have a very low attention span. They cannot concentrate for any length of time. They will avoid responsibility unless we give them the why, unless they understand fully what we are trying to achieve and they buy into that. They are the most difficult generation to engage, to get on board because of the why, because of their attention span. And they're the most anxious generation to date. Yep, so they need to be managed in a certain style if we want to get the best out of them. They respond much better to one-to-ones or small groups. So the traditional team meeting, the traditional training session where the coach is the ringmaster and he's overly disciplined, he's hurling orders, doesn't turn this group on. We have to flex to what we do. We have to flex to them if we want to get the best out of them. If they do understand the why, there's evidence to suggest you'll get more buy-in. You can push them harder. You can squeeze more from them. So this isn't about flexing or adjusting to meet them because they're soft. It's adjusting to meet them because we'll actually get more from them. That's been proven. Did I explain that well, Bilal?
Yeah, fairly clear. So basically, you need to, if I just got it correctly, you need to keep the messages concise, and like compared to the past where you have large team meetings with groups of 30, 35, the modern generation sort of responds better individually or basically in a smaller group, basically, or units.
Short meetings where possible. Yep.
Short meetings.
The magic number is 12 minutes. They lose interest after 6 minutes. It says there. So we should be looking at sorry, there's one more slide there. Yep, they enjoy challenges and puzzles. Rather than them sit in a room for 30 minutes listening to the coach continuously talking, we have to break those meetings up. We have to give them the rationale for why we're doing what we're doing. Something simple as this. You're in the middle of a meeting and you put that slide up. What's the answer, guys? What's the world record for press-ups? Ask them to tap it into the chat channel, please.
Take a guess, anyone? I would say.
Tap it in the chat channel, gentlemen.
Everyone, just take a guess. What's the world record for the most push-ups?
Continuous push-ups.
Yeah, continuous push-ups. One go. I typed 700. Fazil says 500. Everyone else, just take a guess. Dion says 10,000. Gihan says 1,500.
Right, so I've struggled to get engagement thus far. I now have engagement because I've given you some fun. I've given you a small challenge. This is what these guys will respond to. Yep, so if we can do it during meetings to break a meeting up and in our training, the 80-20 mix, then we're going to get much more from them. The answer is, for those who contributed,
10,507. Well done, Dion. You came the closest. He said 10,000.
Right, but I understand what I'm doing. This isn't about the question per se. It's about, I know they're going to lose I'm going to lose engagement. This breaks the meeting for a minute or so. Now I can re-engage them. Now they're ready for more information. Training sessions should follow this kind of pattern as well. We know they're not going to concentrate for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So we have to be able to break it up, re-engage, break it up, re-engage, break it up, re-engage. That's the best way forward. Okay, there are a number of frameworks that I use, Bilal. I think I'll probably come back to those. And if we have a few more questions, and then we can probably finish up with the frameworks that I find useful. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, sounds good, Leigh. So anyone, if you have the questions, just type it up in the chat box or make a request and I'll just give you access to the microphone because today we got a little bit of a smaller group. Leigh, just to follow up, I just to give a little more clarity to the coaches here as well. The question is twofold. How would you say professional rugby differs from schoolboy rugby? And what would a typical, what in your opinion, what would you think a typical training week should look like for a schoolboy rugby player if game is on Saturday?
So let me talk you through a professional week. That's a good starting point, I think. Yeah. So
Yeah.
A professional week would look something like this. We would play the game on the Saturday. The group would rest and recover on the Sunday. On the Monday, boys are still stiff and very sore from the Saturday game. So we call that installation day. It will be low loading physically, but high loading cognitively. It will be feedback. It will be the tactics for this coming week. It'll be lots of one-on-one meetings around performance. And they probably do some lifting, some heavy lifting to maintain strength levels. But I repeat, very low physically, very high cognitively. That's the Monday, or day one as we refer to it. Day two, generally a physical day. We try and break the training up into physical and fast. So our physical day would be day two, or a Tuesday in this case. That would be a heavy day. That would be 2 rugby sessions and a conditioning session of some description.
So it would be morning and evening?
No, it would be all in the day. So it would be a 9 o'clock start, 9 till 10 they might lift. 10:30 to 12:30 they might go on the field. And then lunch, then post-lunch they would go for session 2 rugby. So it's kind of a 3-session day. Yep, every day starting with a meeting. Then the Wednesday, day 3, off to recover from the physical day. Our physical day would look at the distance covered, the high-speed meters, the number of collisions. We would measure quite a lot, and we would try to get that above match intensity. So if a game demands 100%, we will try and get training measures up to about 130%. So we're not only maintaining, we're trying to move the group forward. Okay, so Monday, installation. Tuesday, physical day. Wednesday, off. Thursday, fast day. We start to taper towards the game. We call it sharpening the sword. So it would be a shorter session, but very quick as we can make it. And then Friday would be a captain's run, a traditional captain's run, which I think you're all familiar with, yeah, Bilal?
Yes.
Just more from a confidence perspective. Now, to go back to your original question, are there any questions around that, first of all, guys?
Just to follow up, so roughly with, let's say, SNC and rugby both, roughly how many training hours would that be basically leading up to the game on Saturday combined?
Gosh, so we'd be having 3. Monday would be 2 sessions. Tuesday would be 3 sessions. Thursday would be probably another 3 sessions, not 2 sessions. We're talking of 5, 7, 8 sessions. 8 1-hour sessions, so 8 hours.
8 hours, okay.
But that's a very loose figure. That's what I would suggest. So what else is critical here is recovery. I go back to Herzberg, the 80-20. It's important for guys to rest physically. It's important for guys to rest mentally, to keep their energy up. You can be the best prepared player in the world, but if you have no mental energy or no physical energy, you're not going to perform. We have to be like a bottle of pop on a Saturday morning. Lots and lots of fizz. Does that make sense, Bilal?
Yeah,
will they make sense of that?
Yeah, Leigh. So we're looking at around 8 hours, roughly at an average.
Yep.
Leigh, can I disturb you for a second? This is Gyan. Hi.
Hi.
So the explanation you gave now of the training sessions, is that a professional training session during the season, or is that for schoolboys?
No, that is the professional week. That's currently what we're doing with full-time adult professionals.
Okay. So for schoolboy game season, during the season, what would be ideal workout training week? That's one. And the second question I had was, on the game day, how do you get your players, or what's the routine that they are supposed to get into on a game day, like waking up time to do they have a early morning session again before the game in the afternoon, that sort of Just want to get a rough idea in terms of these. I'm talking about senior schools rugby, 18 to 20-year-olds. How does that games weeks for a game season work out?
Yep. Okay. So I think it would be. I come back to the word balance. Thanks for the question. Great question. Word balance comes back. I think 2 rugby sessions sufficient. What we have to do is be more efficient as coaches in how we manage those sessions, how many objectives we go in with, how many objectives we ask the boys to train. Then probably 2 conditioning sessions around that, and maybe a 3rd dependent on the needs. Most of the young boys don't need fitness. They just need strength work. They get their fitness from the games and from the rugby training, yeah. So the probably 2 lifting sessions, and if you have somebody who perhaps carries a lot of weight or is particularly under strength, you might give them a 3rd session. So I would say you're looking at 4, maybe 5 sessions, depending on their needs.
So Leigh, would it
You
be?
can then add.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, so would it be when you said two, basically you're looking generally at an average of 2 rugby sessions and 2 strength and conditioning sessions before a game on Saturday? So my question is, we are looking at 2 90-minute rugby sessions and 2 60-minute strength and conditioning sessions. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I think going back to Gen Z, what are you going to get out of 90-minute sessions with Gen Z kids? Very often, coaches coach for themselves, not for the kids. They have a list of boxes they want to tick, and they think they've done a wonderful job. They've done a marvelous session. The key question we should be asking ourselves, what do the kids need? What do they need to be at their best on Saturday? Because that's what we want. That's our measure. If they are fizzing like that bottle of pop I talked about, and they're clear, they have enough objectives, but not too many, that's when they're going to be at their best. And the recipe I've given, 2 rugby, 2 physical or 2 S&C, and perhaps an extra one for those guys who need it, along with their schoolwork, along with along with the fact they are young adults, I think is a good balance.
Okay. So Shalinka, sorry, go ahead. Shalinka, I think. Yeah, Shalinka, he's I'll just introduce Shalinka to you, Leigh. So Shalinka, he's actually not a rugby parent, but his daughter is 15 years old and she's the Sri Lanka #1 tennis player. So I guess he has a question as well. So let him fire away. Shalinka, all yours.
Yeah, hi there. 2
Hi,
questions.
Shalinka.
Firstly, on this Gen Z, if they can't keep, so I see this in my daughter, can't keep concentration for more than 10 minutes, and if the game is going her way, that's where she loses things. But if you can't, you're saying that if this generation cannot hold their concentration for too long, and you don't coach them to hold their concentration, how do they actually do it in a game? Now I know you get many ons and offs in rugby, but in tennis it's a point you get an off for 30 seconds and then you got to be on, and it goes on for about 2 hours. How do you train these guys to hold their concentration in a game where they have to do it for long?
Really brilliant question, and I've worked with tennis players, so this is a great question. So what we have to do, we're never going to get them to concentrate for 2 hours. We know that, Gen Z. So we have to go peaks and troughs, peaks and troughs, peaks and troughs. The game of tennis allows us the trough. That's between games when they sit and have a drink. Does that make sense, Shalinka?
Yeah.
Right. So very often you see tennis players between games, they walk off, they put a towel over their head, and they're strumming their racket. Deep in thought, they're strumming their racket. What do you think they're doing then, Shalinka? What's going through their mind?
Yeah, so they probably are. You switch off and then probably are thinking about what they're going to do next in the next game or in the next point.
Generally speaking, when they're strumming, they're replaying the game. They have to run through it again to correct things. And then the umpire might go 30 seconds. And very often you'll see somebody tap their racket on their hand, tap it on their head even, tap it on their knee. That's a trigger. That's a trigger to come back into the here and now and focus on the next period.
I understand.
So there are distinct periods between games when you can disengage, reflect, and then there comes a point, and it's usually a physical trigger. Bang, right, I now need to switch back in. So that's how you can achieve the peaking and troughing. Does that make sense, Shalinka?
Yeah. So it's saying self-conscious, switch on, switch off continuously.
It's a routine, it's a great routine for youngsters to get into. It's always easier to get into these routines when you're young. It's difficult when you're past 25, 26 to bring in a new routine.
Right. Understand. Got another question. I think you mentioned, I know it's pro training that you mentioned, but you still mentioned on a Wednesday or so, there is a gym session and a training session straight off. And you mentioned heavy lifting and then training.
Yeah.
So after a gym session, you go into training without a break?
They might have a milkshake or a 30-minute break to top up before they go out onto the session. What we've found is to make sure the players are fizzing at the end of the week, try and make the day as tight as possible. Rather than have long periods between sessions, which might physiologically be the best thing to do, psychologically it doesn't work. The players want to be home with their families. It's their work. They want to come in, get their work done, and then go home. So there's a sweet spot between how long you spend between sessions to make sure they're psychologically ready at the end of the week. Does that make sense? Have I answered that well?
Yeah, so this doesn't put any injury risk?
Your body adapts. We are amazing creatures. We can train our body to do almost anything. We found the body breaks down because of the psychology very often, not the physiology. Get the psychology right, and the physiology generally follows.
Okay.
So to answer your question, enough of a break, enough of a gap between, but not too much.
Okay. Fine. Thanks.
So, Leigh, just to continue, just to make sure we had Gyan asking the question I wanted to basically ask up, and just that continuation of comparison with what a professional rugby week should look like and a schoolboy rugby player. So we spoke about 2 90-minute rugby sessions and probably 2 45-minute SNC sessions. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think 75-minute sessions are kind of the vogue now.
Okay.
Yeah, I was probably a little too short. 90 minutes too long. You can get it to about 75 minutes. Everything done. Warm up, warm down. That's good. For the stuff off the pitch, 1 hour, yeah.
Okay, so Leigh, so basically we're looking at a total training time for about 4 hours of the week for a schoolboy rugby player. So now I'm just going to break it to you. I do not want to comment too much about what other coaches do, but I will explain what I probably did during my time. It used to be probably about 3 90-minute rugby sessions a week, and 2 60-minute SNC sessions of a week for probably the teams I have coached over the 10 years. And the issue I faced a lot was particularly when you have to go and meet the board members end of the week, particularly if it was a bad performance, would be which totals amount again to about probably I think 6 hours of training. Is you're not training enough because other school teams are training 12 hours, 15 hours, or some even 20 hours, and those are the teams that are dominating. And if they are tasting success training, that amount of training volume, first question is how do you, again, I come back to that, the politics, handling the politics side of managing that, the expectations of the committee, And would you say anything above 10 hours is too much for a schoolboy rugby team? Because there are teams that train 15, 20 hours and are seeing the results.
So yeah, I think 10, 12 hours for boys is too much. I think it's affecting their life balance. So they must be losing out somewhere to facilitate their rugby. That's just my subjective opinion on that, yeah? Who's going to be brave enough to break this cycle? The evidence I've given you is based statistically. The All Blacks are doing it. England are doing it. As you mentioned, I work with Steve Borthwick. He's a good friend. I know what England are doing currently. We talk on a weekly basis. These are the best teams and the best prepared athletes in the world. And they are working along the model that I talked about. 10 hours maximum. Yep. In terms of the physical preparation. When is somebody in Sri Lanka going to have the gumption to break this cycle and do us right? Not what other clubs are doing, not what other schools are doing. Because I would suggest it isn't necessarily coaching that's making them win. From what I understand, there's a lot of scholarships on offer. They just recruit the best players into a particular school and then convince themselves that they're doing a good job because they're winning. If you give if you've got the best 15 players, you should be winning. But are you developing them to the best of their ability? Are you leaving them in a good place for adulthood? I think that's an important obligation we have to fulfill.
So would you say, Leigh, so when you have that argument that the teams that are training so many hours for the week are the teams that are dominating the league and winning, just to put it in very simply, probably even say if the training is not optimized or maximized, they're winning because they probably have the best players. Would you put it that, not particularly the best training methods or the training protocols?
Yeah, that's what I would suggest. If there was evidence to suggest that more training equals better performance, I'd go with it. But I know from personal experience, from looking at some of the best teams in the world, more training doesn't result in better performance. Optimal training results in best performance.
Just to follow up with you, Leigh, on that, because again, I think you were featured in that movie a bit as well, the Brighton Miracle, I think, which was all about Japan's campaign in that World Cup where they beat the Miracle win against South Africa. And that had a lot about how Eddie Jones was pushing them really hard, and the players didn't like it. And I would guess that's more than probably it was off season as well, but it was more than the usual norm. And I think he mentioned when the rest of the world is sleeping, we are training at 4:30 a.m. or 5 a.m. or whatever he said. So when you compare it, and since you're involved in that campaign, what's your argument to that? And if you are sort of even bringing it in a sort of schoolboy rugby context where Japan probably trained a lot more than the other teams to topple those big nations?
This is a great question. And firstly, Eddie was that person who broke the mold in Japan. Japan was renowned and still is in the universities for long training sessions, for long days with the university guys. Eddie broke the cycle. And what he did, he trained smart. He trained them harder than they've ever trained, but for the right period of time. So they had a +1 model. And what I mean by that is they would play a game on a Saturday, and perhaps the ball in play time was 55 minutes. Okay. Then this training was based around playing another game during the next week from a preparation perspective, but training it at 130% of the maximum. So it wasn't the amount of training they did, it was the intensity of that training. And it was just another 35 minutes ball in play. So that might have been 20 minutes on the physical day, on the Tuesday, then another 15 on the Friday, on the fast day. So it wasn't the quantity, it was the quality that Eddie chased. A couple of little frameworks that I tend to use. First one is understanding fatigue and short-term memory. How many things, Shalinka, can you put your camera on for me, please? Mind if I use you as an example?
Sure.
Yeah, let me just get him
Sure.
on camera. Ask to start video. There you go.
Am I on mute? Yeah. Can you hear me, Bilal?
Yeah,
Yep, I can hear you.
I've sent you a request to on your camera, Shalinka. Did you get it?
Oh,
Okay, doesn't have to see him. Ah, there you are. Would you mind sharing your phone number with me?
Yeah. Right now?
Yes, please.
Yeah. 077 303 5231.
Could you give it me again? And could everyone listen to the bite sizes? Off you go, Shalinka.
077 303 5231.
What chunks did he give us the numbers in, guys? Right on the chat, please.
Could you repeat the question, Leigh? It was not clear.
So Shalinka almost sang a song. He gave us the number, but he sang it to us. And he gave us bytes of information. All right. What were those bytes? Were they bytes of 5, bytes of 8, bytes of 2, bytes of 3? What were they?
Okay,
Sri Lanka, did you recognize it yourself?
Yeah. That's the maximum I can go also. So that's the problem.
Right.
So Dion and
he
Dion
gave
says in threes. Yeah, Dion and
brilliant. Yeah. Our mind in this lovely calm state will only cope with 3 things, maybe 4. The science says it's 5 plus or minus 2. That's what the science says. So we are then putting people under pressure. Does that short-term memory become better or worse? Sri Lanka, can you remember more or less when you put under pressure?
Less.
Brilliant. So what do? We go to training. We have a slow rugby session and try and load guys with 7, 8, 9 things. With them a disservice. So to have the courage to give them the 2 or 3 things in attack and the 2 or 3 things in defense that are going to win us the game. And then we can train fast. Okay, so that's the first one. Our mind works in 3s. A Mars a day helps you rest and play. TV advertising plays on it. Big time. We should be coaching along those lines. Next one. Understanding if we are pain-driven, pain-threat-driven, or reward-challenge-driven. The Welsh culture I come from, very pain-threat-driven. What that means is the messages I send to the players are very threat-based. We have to, we must, we've got to. If we don't, there's a consequence. What we should be doing with Gen Z is giving them a challenge, giving them a reward. Look, boys, if we do this, we can achieve. Look what we learn. I find, having visited Sri Lanka, a lot of the language there is pain-driven rather than reward-driven. Would I be correct? I'm happy to be wrong here, Bilal.
Sorry, Leigh.
Would I be correct in having visited Sri Lanka a number of times and watched coaching? A lot of the language used by the coaches is pain-driven. There's consequences. It has to be. It must be. It's got to be.
Yeah,
rather than offering a nice challenge. Yeah, a reward that if we get this, then this leads on to something else. So start listening to your language, guys, because Gen Z switch off to threat-based language and they switch on to reward-based language, reward pleasure-based language. What are you? What are your players? What type of language is going to get the best from them? What's going to make them fizz on the Saturday? We are going away from threat-based to reward-based. And the more generations that come through, we'll keep moving that in that direction. Have I explained that well?
Yes, yeah, fairly clearly.
Right. So, Bilal, what are you? Are you threat driven or are you reward driven?
I think when I probably started coaching, soon as I left school, I probably was on the more threat and pain spectrum. I won't say I've totally come out of it, but doing your best, probably I'm now midway somewhere in between.
Make it an interesting challenge. Make it an exciting challenge. Yep. So let them see the rewards of achieving, not the threat of not achieving. Really important. Next one. I've talked about the Herzberg, the 80-20. Remember, this is important in life. Very important in life generally to make sure they got a good balance, but also what brings them back. The 20% motivation, the 20% fun, the 20% engagement is critical in getting them back the next session. Okay, but it's a good little rule of thumb. I'd be interested to go around the audience and ask what your life balance is currently. You're all probably thinking about it. Bilal, what's yours?
Probably about 40-60 might be.
Ah, you've got a good life then. If you can achieve that, you're not doing bad, mate. Yeah.
Yeah.
The trouble is when you get to 90-10, yeah, everything starts becoming a problem, a chore. We lose the fun side of life, and I'm sure some of you are experiencing that at the moment.
Probably,
forget.
Sorry to interrupt you, I'm probably 40-60 now because I'm not coaching rugby.
Ah, right, okay. Yeah, so when you were coaching, think back, what would it have been like then?
Yeah, probably 95-5.
Yep, so and then everything becomes chore and hard. Absolutely. And then the last one, guys, is the 6-3-1 rule. Everything I'm talking about is not just for rugby. It's for life. It's for work. It's for business. That's where there's a great transfer into coaching in business and coaching in sport. Yeah. 6-3-1. If any of you run a team, as coaches obviously do, you're going to get a mix of three types of people. You're going to get people who are real activators, people who make change, positive, want to drive you forward, reward based, yeah, reward pleasure based. You're going to get another group who are the opposite. They are terrorists. Everything's always wrong. We should be doing it this way. We should be doing it that way. And then the third group is the group that sits on the fence. They can fall either side of the fence. First question, what do you think the split over any 10 people are? How many are the fence sitters? How many are the terrorists? How many are the activators, the real positive guys? Can you put it into the chat for me, please? Do you understand the question, guys?
Repeat might be required.
Right, so within any group of 10 people, whether you're talking about work, whether you're talking about sport, there's one group who are real positive activators, very reward and pleasure driven, really make things happen positively for the team. There's another group that just sit in the middle, don't know which way to fall. And then the other group are those pessimists, the terrorists. They'll undo the team. They can be quite poisonous. What we need to do is make sure the fence sitters fall with the activists. Because if they fall with the terrorists, we've got a problematic environment. So in terms of the numbers, how many are positive activists? How many sit on the fence? How many terrorists do we have in any group of 10? Hopefully that's explained it a little better. Yeah, I don't think I've asked the question well enough. I'm going to get some. So look, oh, we've got one. 6 pessimists, 3 in the middle, 1 positive. Positive, 1 positive. Okay, the correct answer, guys. This is based from social science, not me. There's evidence out there from behavioral and social science. There's 1 terrorist There are 3 activists and there are 6 who sit on the fence. Those 6 people can make the difference between winning and losing. So what's important is we make sure they fall in with the activists, not in with our single terrorist. Does that make sense, Bilal?
Yep, perfect sense.
Brilliant, brilliant. I find I've got lots and lots of frameworks to address specific areas, specific problems, but I think those are 4 general ones that perhaps may help you in the short term.
Okay, brilliant. So Leigh, we've just sorry, go ahead.
I'm good to take some questions. If anyone has one.
Yeah, so I'd like to just get Fazil started. He sent me a question in the morning. So Fazil, can I just give you permission to ask it directly from Leigh? So Fazil is currently the Trinity College coach and probably the most, if I'm correct, Fazil, are you the most capped player for Sri Lankan rugby?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you know what, Fazil? I thought I recognized your face. I used to coach Hong Kong.
Yes, I know.
I'm pretty sure we've met before. That's good. That's good to know. How are you? Hope you're keeping well.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm doing good.
Good.
Thank you.
What is your question, mate?
Bilal, do you want to?
Yeah, go ahead, Fazil. You can fire away. Or if you want me, I
Yeah,
can.
John, I just want to know, like, for us, our practice sessions are going well. When it comes to game time, they are like performance. They have performance anxiety. They go into a shell. So, so they don't transfer the practice session to the match day. So, how do you fix that?
Right. I come back to threat reward. Yeah. Okay. When you train in the week, are they having fun? Are they enjoying it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What happens on a Saturday? They feel the pressure. Are you transferring that pressure? Is it we must win? We have to do this. We've got to, or there's a consequence? Or should we be saying, guys, this is exciting. This is a really great challenge. We can learn a lot from this. Let's just go out and do our best. Kick some ass, but let's go and really enjoy it. Because that's the language that the Gen Z, the Gen Alpha respond more to. We came through an era where it was threat driven. We have to do it. We must do it. I'm a very threat-based individual. I have a fear of failing, a fear of losing. That's not great. You're always going to be inhibited, closed off. What we need for the kids to go out there and see the positivity of the challenge, the excitement of it, how much they can learn, how much they can improve. Do you see the difference in the language, Fazil?
Yeah, got it. Yeah, we are putting more pressure on the kids on the game day, do this, and you need to win, you need to score this much of tries, and not
yeah. That's because that's what works for you. But these are different now. We have to find out what works for them.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great. I hope clear answer, good?
Yeah, clear answer, John.
Fazil is asking, he's coaching a school that's probably playing the longest rugby rivalry, the Bradby Shield in Sri Lanka, which is over 60 years. Basically, how do you train the players to absorb the pressure? That game attracts about 10,000 people to come and watch the game, compared to playing in front of 500 players on the normal weekend games and in training. So how do you train players to manage to absorb that pressure through training or through mental strategies of playing in front of 10,000 people in the crowd? So I think that is also one of your sort of questions as well.
So how do you currently approach it? Do you make it bigger than it is, or do you normalize it? What is your current approach?
I think everybody make it bigger, from the school, kids, everybody, like, always everybody makes a big event. in school. That
Right,
is the biggest event.
So I think then you have to protect your kids from that as best you can, but also normalize it. Because when, yeah, okay, guys, it's a final, there's tradition, we understand that. That should serve as positive motivation. But really, it's a game of rugby. So let's focus on what we can control. Yeah, let's focus on the bits that we've trained. Okay, lock everything else out. It'll be noisy, there'll be shouting, but if we do what we've trained, then that's all we can control. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yeah, got it.
Don't make it bigger than it already is. Normalize it, bring it down. It's just another game of rugby. You use the occasion for motivation.
Okay. Thank
Kamal,
you.
you had a question. You can fire away. Just unmute your question and go for it. Wait, let me unmute you, Kamal. Kamal, you need to unmute yourself. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, clear. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. One of your workshop previously, what you had in Sri Lanka, like this is one of the question I was just thinking to ask from you. That time I can remember you bought this entire team to 4 quadruples. One is the terrorist, then the activator, zombie,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
so like what like I was just thinking to ask like what is happened to the zombie, like in that four pillars.
Right, let me explain it to the rest of the group. It's a very good memory. Kamaj, sorry, a pronunciation of your name. How do you pronounce it?
Kamal.
Kamaj?
Kamal.
Yeah,
Kamal. Very well done on remembering. Yeah, so there's 4 types of player. There's a zombie, there's a pacifist, there's an activist, and there's a terrorist. And if you think through your team at the moment, you'll have some zombies, you'll have some pacifists. They're the guys who just turn up training, never any trouble. Yeah. Then you have your activists. They're the guys who make things happen, team leaders, that type of thing. And then you have a couple of terrorists. Go back to the 6-3-1. You're always going to have at least 1 terrorist in a rugby group, maybe 2. What you've got to try and do is move everybody forward. Yep. So what was your question? What was the actual question, Kamaj?
So just what I want to know, like now the zombie, but like we know like we have activate, like we know the terrorist part, we know the Pacific part, like the zombie person when he comes there. So how we can manage? And the second question is like what I have seen in like most of the some teams, like our best player sometimes he's becoming the terrorist. So how we can manage him?
Yep. So let's start with the zombies first. To move somebody forward, you have to understand their why. Yeah. Why are they playing rugby? What are they doing? What's important to them? If we find out their why, we have a much better chance of moving them forward. What motivates them? And then what's getting in their way? What's stopping them improving? It could be something at home. It could be something in school. It could be something personal. But unless we try and find out their why, it's unlikely we're ever going to move anyone forward. So Gen Z people, try and understand their why. What's their motivation? And then what's stopping them achieving that? 2 key questions. Then the terrorist. Sorry, is that okay? Kamaj, have I answered that one? Is that good information?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Then the terrorist, are they even aware? Every terrorist, so in professional rugby, a player, Fazal will understand this, a player gets to about 30, 35. They have a lot of knowledge, but their body just can't produce it anymore. But they kid themselves, they're still doing it. They become better talkers than they are doers. Would you agree, Fazal? Yeah? But unless you explain it, sit down, draw the model out. Look, mate, for 10 years, you've been a really good activist. You've been really good for this team. But at the moment, you're just not doing it. And you're in danger of stepping into this box and becoming problematic. Results I found with that conversation, is they come back on side because they just don't realize what they're doing themselves. I've had one bad experience where he refused to accept it. Out of 20 conversations, one bad one isn't too bad. So the answer is sit and explain. Draw the 4 quadrants out. Show where he's been, show where he currently is, and the danger, that's the downside of that for the team. Does that help?
Yes.
Honest and frank conversation. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, Leigh, do you have time for just 2 more questions, or do you need to run?
Okay for 2 more. Go on.
Yeah. Abdullah, you have a question? Do you want to fire away? Just on the camera for him. Abdullah, do you have a question? Yeah. Okay. So Abdullah will come, but okay, we've got. Okay, Abdullah is starting the video. Yeah, we can't see.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Fire away, Abdullah. I can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep. All good. Good to meet you.
All right. Yeah, same here, Leigh. Just a couple of questions. From your experience around the many countries you have coached in, how is the under-19, under-20 rugby structured in those countries? That is just one question. The other question is, how is the transition from schools rugby to club rugby managed? And generally, who are the stakeholders who should be a part of managing that process? Those are just the 2 questions I would like to ask.
Okay. What was the first question again? Sorry.
First one is generally under-19, under-20 rugby. How is it structured? Not so much the training sessions, but the overall season, number of games, and things like that. Yeah.
What they've done in most of the tier 1 countries is align the season very well. So you go from a local schools competition to a district competition, to a regional competition, to the national program that generally ends up with age group internationals. So there's a clear throughput. So you start with a pyramid at the bottom with the school competition, then that's refined to go to like a regional competition, and so on and so forth. Does that answer that question, Abdullah?
Yeah. So about how many games would it actually be a season?
Now, there lies the problem. There are some schools playing too much rugby, and there are some schools not playing enough rugby, and that is the current challenge. The facts are that there's fewer and fewer players engaging in the game of rugby union, and there's a lot to do with the head injury situation. There's a lot of bad publicity around concussion and those types of things, and a lot of parents are being deterred. We have to change that mindset and continue to grow the base. So the pathway is good. It's effective. It's whether we can get enough players in at the bottom end to make it an efficient pathway or a better pathway.
So ideally, about how many games would be for under-19 or under-20 team? How many is the ideal number of games or the range that they should play?
I'm not an expert here, so you're probably asking the wrong one. I don't know how many they're playing, but I would say 15 games.
15 games. Okay, because the thing is in Sri Lanka, like what I have observed is generally, the pre-season goes on, for about a good 6 months, and then they get into season for about a couple of months, and then the season is over in another couple of months. So it's about a 10-month period where your pre-season is actually 6 months. So I just want to know during this age whether they should be more engaged in games, or is that pre-season, does it actually need to be so long? Or is that the way it should be, so that that transition from schools to club rugby is less? Or that's just what I want to kind of find out.
Right. The resounding message from me is more is not better. Okay? Mm-hmm. Don't get kidded that because a school is successful and it trains for long periods of time, that's the reason for success. They just have better players sometimes. I think we have an obligation to grow the whole person. So I think 15, 18 games is enough to make sure they're growing in rugby. And then we should be exposing them to other experiences, different sports, different life experiences. I come back to balance in Herzberg. We have to make sure that they've got an effective development balance. What do we want, Abdullah, at the end of this? What we want, a balanced young men who are prepared for life, not kids who are burnt out and sick of the game because they've been told what to do for the last 10 years. Keep the end goal in mind and reverse engineer. We need good young adults. That's what we should be producing.
Absolutely agree.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Short on time.
Yeah, just Gihan has a quick, I think, follow-up question. So he just asked, how long do you think the preseason should be? Basically, Abdullah mentioned it's about 6 months for most schools. Is that too long? What should the ideal preseason be before the first game?
So professionals now, we've just started training middle of July, and the games will start middle of September. All right, so that's a 3-month window. July, August, it's not even that, is it? It's probably an 8-week window, between 8 and 12 weeks for a professional team. Does that give you the answer? I just don't see any point in 6 months.
Okay, cool. So basically at the moment, schoolboy rugby players have a long preseason than professional club players probably. So.
Yeah. Well, imagine a lot of the professional players now, Welsh players coming back from tours to New Zealand, Australia, they will be given a mandatory 5 weeks off. Yep. Absolutely mandatory. And then we'll start integrating them back in. So they're probably going to have a good break and an 8 to 12 week preparation window for the new season.
Cool. Just a final question, Leigh, before we wrap up. So Ravi, I think, has just raised his hand. He has a question. Ravi, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Last question of the session.
Doctor, my question is going to be more on the psychological angle. I would like to know the Z, the Generation Z. We say they are in Sri Lankan rugby, they are training more than what is required. What you said is probably 8 to 9 hours a week. What happens to their behavior patterns, especially when they overtrain more than the hours required? When they go back home, do you have a knowledge of how that behavior affects them, especially on their studies and their aggression towards parent and the environment? That is one question. Another question. What happens for this generation? Did they lose a match because of a mistake of a referee? They play well, but the referee makes a blunder and they lose the game. How does the psychology affect them to recover, and how does the motivational factor, how does that affect them to get back into the normal game after that?
So it's great questions, very difficult questions to answer in a short space of time. But in terms of a referee making a bad decision, the player making a bad blunder, there are lots of techniques, repair techniques, to get the player back to focusing. Yep, there's simple little processes you can go through, simple little tools you can give them so they can cope better with that adversity, and you can get them back on track. So they're in place, quite easy. What was the other question? I'm sorry.
The other question is based on this overtraining of schoolboy players. Some of them are 16, I would say 16 to 19 years of age training, Generation Z. They overtrain. How does that affect their behavior patterns when they go home? Does it have any aggressive behavior? Does it affect their parents' relationships? What about the environment? What do you think about that?
I can't answer the question. Does it affect the relationships at home? I don't know. I'm not that much of an expert. But what I do know, being a parent, is if my teenage son is tired, and then they become sulky, then they become distant, and then it starts to affect the relationship, the father-son relationship. Kids are hard work when they're tired, and we mustn't forget you, even at 18, they're still kids. So I keep coming back to this balance, not overtraining, getting the balance right. We want a balanced individual, a balanced young adult at 21, 24, 28, who can live life and face life's challenges. I question if we're going to burn them out at 18, if we are producing that. I hope I've answered your question as well as I can.
That's fine, Doctor. Thank you very much.
Okay, everyone, thanks a lot for joining us. Just before we wrap up, Leigh, so could you just, because I think we had a few people joining us late, again, just explain to us a bit of the sports psychology as well as the corporate consultancy work you do and you're available, and they can contact me and I will put you on to them. So do you just want to explain that once more before we wrap up?
Yeah, okay. So I'm currently doing consultancy work. One for the Scarlets region, where I'm the performance director. I work there kind of 4 days a week, overseeing everything, performance of everyone, all the different sub-disciplines, the S&C department, the medical department, the players, obviously, yeah, making sure that everyone's functioning to the best of their ability. Then I also work for a company, DTP Limited, Dr. David Priestley Limited, where we work with businesses for one-to-one coaching, performance coaching, to make sure they, as an individual or their team, are functioning at an absolute maximum. Yep, whilst also considering well-being, health, and all those things. So I like to think I've got a range of expertise across both sport and business, and I've given you a flavour of some of the models, some of the frameworks that I kind of enjoy. There are a plethora of those out there in terms of addressing problems that youngsters or indeed adults may be having.
Okay, nice. So if anyone on the call or anyone listening to the recording wants to draw on Leigh's expertise, feel free to contact me and I will connect you with him. He's happy to work with Sri Lankan athletes as well as corporates. So Leigh, thanks a lot for joining us today. We've gone about 20 minutes overboard, but I think it was quite engaging. Thanks so much for taking the time, and thanks everyone for taking the time off your end of your workday to show up. And I'm sure even the people listening to the recording would benefit from this as well. Leigh, do you have anything to say before we wrap up?
No, I'd just like to thank everyone for taking the time to come and listen to me. Hopefully it's made some sense, and if you take just one or two things away, then it's been worthwhile. And as Bilal has said, if there's any need for a follow-up, I'm around and would enjoy working with you.
Thanks, Leigh. Thanks everyone for joining, and I will be in touch and I will be sharing the recording with you. And Gihanda says thanks a lot, Leigh. Great engagement, much appreciated. Fazil Marja says thanks a lot, Leigh. So have a good night, everyone, and stay in touch.
Thank you, Bilal. Thank you, Doctor. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.